Have you ever thought that maybe what keeps you from thriving isn't what you lack, but what is left? There is too much anxiety, too much distraction, too much unnecessary accumulation of things, of commitments, of financial noises. While the world talks about doing more, there is an ancient code that teaches the opposite. Stop. And stop not out of fear, but out of wisdom. In Judaism, there is a principle little known outside of more traditional communities. A type of fasting that involves not food, but money. Yes, a financial fast that has been used for centuries to unlock parnasa, adjust the flow of abundance, and reposition the individual spiritually in the face of what he wishes to attract. Imagine a Jewish businessman who, at the height of his prosperity, decided to stop for 7 days. He bought nothing but the essentials. He did not sign contracts. It did not invest. He didn't spend it, he just noted. And in that strategic silence, he realized where the money was leaking, where he was feeding a cycle of scarcity disguised as progress. And it was precisely in this pause, in this intentional emptying, that he heard what no spreadsheet had revealed, that abundance does not enter where it is already crowded with haste, attachment, control. Fasting in this case was not a deprivation. It was a repositioning. What you discover today may forever change the way you view your relationship with money. Because the Jewish financial fast is not about saving. It's about creating space. It's not about cutting spending. It's about paving the way. And when you understand this spiritual code, revealed in the Torah, lived in silence by high-souled sages and entrepreneurs, you realize that wealth is not forced. Wealth invites itself. When you come into contact with this kind of wisdom, deep, precise, passed down from generation to generation within the Jewish universe, something inside you recognizes that there is another way of dealing with money. A more conscious, more aligned, more integral way. It's like being part of a lineage that understands that thriving is not just accumulating, but circulating, respecting time, honoring the process. And this channel is exactly that space. A meeting point for those who want to grow with purpose, for those who seek wealth with soul, and not just in a hurry. Therefore, it becomes natural to be part of this community. Check now if you are already subscribed to the channel and walk with us on this journey. Because here, abundance has direction, and driving with awareness transforms everything. Think for a moment. What if what prevents your prosperity is not scarcity, but excess? Excess of stimulus, automatic consumption, anxiety camouflaged in impulsive purchases. Within Jewish tradition, there is an ancestral concept that answers this with surgical precision. Tayanit, fasting. But not only physical fasting, as many people know. There is a financial fast, and it goes much deeper than cutting spending. It is a re-education of desire, a refinement of intention, a silencing of the ego to amplify the voice of the soul. This fast is not about getting poorer. It's about purifying. It's about interrupting cycles of consumption without consciousness to make room for new possibilities of abundance. In Judaism, everything that involves material energy needs a spiritual vessel, and this is represented by the concept of klai, the vessel. When that container is full of noise, distractions, purposeless spending, it can no longer hold light. It becomes shallow, cracked, and any blessing that comes in drips. Therefore, financial fasting is practiced by many who know the Torah intimately. People who understood that, before attracting more, it is necessary to pause. Stop chasing the wind. Stop spending to fill silences. And then, yes, create a fertile field. Successful Jewish entrepreneurs share that moments of conscious material abstinence preceded their biggest financial turnarounds. It was no coincidence. It was clarity. Imagine 7 days where you don't buy anything but the essentials, where you watch your impulse before you open a shopping app, where you choose not to talk about money, not as denial, but as honor. You begin to listen to your real need. You begin to notice the difference between genuine desire and disguised neediness. This is Hishtadlut with kavana, effort with intention. This silence in consumption opens up an energetic space that the noise of haste can never access. It's like emptying the glass so that the new wine can be served, or how to stop eating for a while to allow the body to assimilate what has already been eaten. In a world that pushes you to always want more, Jewish financial fasting teaches you to do less, with more sense, because prosperity is not quantity, it's flow. And the flow only happens when there is containment, when there is a pause, when money ceases to be an emotional shield to become an instrument of elevation. This is what financial fasting activates, a repositioning. You leave the place of who you need to have to be and become someone who knows how to receive, with maturity, with structure, with direction. The Torah has never demonized wealth, but she always warned about the danger of getting lost in it. Therefore, this spiritual practice, often hidden behind discrete decisions, becomes a powerful key to attracting abundance with depth. It's not a trick. It is not a magic formula. It is a return to the essence, a tikkun of desire, a quiet realignment, which speaks loudly in finances. Now imagine what can happen when you decide to stop, not out of scarcity, but out of faith. Not out of fear, but out of reverence, because it is in this conscious emptiness that true abundance finds space to enter and stay. While many still associate fasting with scarcity, forced cutting, deprivation, those who truly understand the spiritual roots of financial fasting understand that it is actually a secret reserved for those who want to grow consciously. In more traditional Jewish circles, especially among successful businessmen, this practice is not only known, it is strategic. Because the more you have, the more you need to purify what you carry. And this has nothing to do with idle money, but with too full mind, misaligned emotions, and messy desires. Financial fasting in this context becomes a recalibration pause, a reconfiguration of what really matters. Imagine an investor who, even with multiple sources of income flowing, decides to stop for 7 days. It doesn't just freeze spending, it silences expansion anxiety. It temporarily stops external targets to check the internal state. And it is not because it is in crisis. It's because it wants to sustain the next level more consistently. There is a much talked about case within a traditional Jewish community in New York of an investor named David who, after a phase of sky-high profits, began to feel an inner exhaustion. Nothing seemed satisfactory. The meetings, the negotiations, the returns, everything lost flavor. He was guided by his spiritual mentor to fast from consumption, not to stop working, but to stop buying, accumulating, talking about investments for 7 days. At first he thought it was strange, but he soon realized he was addicted to the movement, all the time in search of the next number. Fasting did not impoverish David, he restored it. During this pause, he realized that some of his recent decisions had been driven more by comparison than by clarity. He was targeting the other's portfolio, no longer his own route. When the fast ended, he not only came back with new ideas, but with a new presence. His next moves were more assertive, more connected to his purpose. And the result? It wasn't just financial, it was spiritual. He said, "It's as if I've cleaned my eyes with ice water. I saw it again." This kind of story reveals a silent truth. Abundance does not tolerate confusion. It needs order, internal structure. And financial fasting is a method of emptying to reorganizing. To stop not because everything is wrong, but because you want the right to come from a more aligned place. That's why the rich who think long-term do this. They understand that money is like water. If the container is dirty, it doesn't matter how much water gets in it. It will be contaminated. Fasting cleanses this vessel. He is the tikkun of finance, an invisible but profoundly effective fix. There is no spotlight, there is no ostentation, but it has a force that moves dimensions that calculations would never reach. Perhaps the real secret of expansion lies in this silent pause, because it is in this silence that the sound of truth appears. And from here, the journey deepens even further. And when we hear this kind of story, something inside us is also silenced, right? Because it's not just about money, it's about internal space. It's about realizing that sometimes the next step doesn't depend on more effort, but on less distraction, of more essence, less accumulation. And this touches us because, deep down, we have all felt that moment when we have a lot on the outside, but we are disorganized on the inside. When the soul begins to ask for a pause, but the body continues to run. So, if this topic provoked you, If it ignited in you a desire to do it differently, write in the comments, "I choose to pause to thrive." This simple phrase can be the starting point for a new cycle. And by sharing, you not only commit to this fasting of conscience, you inspire others to do the same. There are times in life when true transformation happens not because of what we add, but because of what we put aside. And in the Jewish universe, this is expressed very strongly in the different types of fasting. Yes, fasting that goes beyond food. In Judaism, there are ancestral practices that involve intentional pauses in finances and desires, not as punishment, but as a sacred tool to recalibrate the soul and reopen the paths of sustenance, clarity, and true prosperity. Let's talk about the first one, the expense, or as some masters call it, Shevitat Mammon. The word Shevita comes from the same root as Shabbat, rest. But here, the rest is not only for the body, but for the pocket. It is about spending a period, usually 24 hours, without buying anything that is not essential. No impulsive delivery, no credit cards spinning without awareness, no going to websites just to see the offers. The proposal is simple. Stop and look. This type of fasting creates a space for the person to reconnect with the intention behind the money. After all, how much of what we buy is really a necessity? And how much is anesthesia? During this fast, the impact is not just financial, it is spiritual. The Torah teaches us that money is a form of energy. When you stop the flow of unnecessary consumption, you don't stop abundance. On the contrary, you clear the way so that it flows more consciously. It's like turning off a leaking faucet so that the incoming water actually fills the container. A student from rural California once reported that after her first Shevitat Mammon, she not only realized where she was spending without conscience, but received an unexpected job offer the next day. Coincidence? Perhaps. But in the spirit world, coincidences are often coded messages. The second type is even more subtle, yet profoundly transformative. The desire fast, known as tzimtzum. This concept is very rich. Tzimtzum in Jewish mysticism means contraction and represents the moment when the Creator, when creating the world, contracted his light to make room for the existence of the other. In the financial context, practicing tzimtzum is to contain impulses. It is, for example, seeing something you really want and consciously choosing not to buy it, not for lack, not out of fear, but by dominance, self-control, energy control. Imagine a successful investor walking into a luxury goods store. He can afford to buy any item there, but he chooses not to, not out of economy, but out of awareness. When he leaves the store, something inside him is stronger, more stable, because he didn't buy out of emotional need, but out of rational choice. This is the power of tzimtzum, when we stop acting as a slave to desire to become the master of decisions. This type of fasting releases an inner force that is magnetic. People who practice intentional contraction often report an unexpected increase in financial flow in the following days. This is because the universe responds not to lack, but to integrity. And then there is the third, perhaps the most modern of all, but with roots as old as the Psalms, the fast of comparison. It may seem simple at first glance, but its effect is profound. It is a commitment to abstain, for a predetermined period, whether 24 hours or a week, from everything that feeds comparison, envy, or inadequacy. This includes social networks, online storefronts, even conversations that revolve around ostentation or status. During the comparison fast, the idea is not to pretend that the world out there doesn't exist, but rather to protect your emotional field from the intoxication that certain images and narratives provoke. Because what we see constantly begins to shape our decisions, often unconsciously. And in this silent cycle of, I should be in that place, I should be earning that, I should have this lifestyle, we are undermining our own financial self-esteem, our internal rhythm, and even our ability to recognize what is already a blessing in our life. The Torah teaches that Ein Adam Roe Chovato, one does not see one's own error. And the mistake of many today is to be comparing their backstage with the other's stage. This fasting, then, is an act of humility and realignment. A Jewish financial mentor once told of a client, a young entrepreneur in the technology sector, who lived in anguish even after selling his startup for millions. Every time I opened Instagram and saw colleagues traveling, posting cars or awards, I felt like I was still late. His rabbi suggested that he do a tanit reshimot, a feed fast, 7 days away from any stimulus of comparison, and instead, he should write down every day 3 personal achievements that he had ignored. By the end of the week, he was more emotionally stable, reinvested with more clarity and focus, and found pleasure in revisiting his own merits. More than a fast, it was a rapprochement with the truth. Each of these fasts has a unique function, but they all share the same purpose: to create space for abundance to enter. And we are not talking here about an empty abundance, based only on numbers in the account or accumulated possessions. We are talking about a legitimate expansion, connected to your essence and flowing from a clean, available, awakened vessel. In Judaism, this vessel is called a kli, and spiritual kli is not formed in haste or excess. It is formed with consciousness. The most beautiful thing about this practice is that it does not require isolation. It does not require long hours of study or extreme dedication. The decision to observe, contain, reorganize is enough. The desire to restore the balance between receiving and retaining, between buying and building is enough. It's not about not having. It's about knowing how to receive with honor. It's about stopping consuming as an escape and starting to consume with intention. Most people who live financially stuck are not like this for lack of opportunity, but for excess of internal noise. And fasting, when well applied, is the silence necessary to hear the voice of the soul. It is the turning off of distractions to listen to what really needs to be adjusted. Because there is no point in opening new sources of income if your interior is blocking the flow. There's no point in chasing the next big idea if you haven't made peace with what you've already achieved. Imagine for a moment that your financial life is like a glass, and that every day you try to fill that glass with more work, more ideas, more goals, more movement. But the glass is already full, not of clean water, but of excess, of worries, poorly digested decisions, impulsive purchases, internal demands, external comparisons. Jewish wisdom teaches us that the vessel of prosperity, the klai, can only be filled with new blessing when there is space. And financial fasting, as we have seen so far, is precisely this sacred emptying. Not everything, but what is weighing, stealing lightness, clarity, and direction. Because prosperity without focus is noise. Prosperity with intention is a channel. When you choose to practice any of the forms of financial fasting, whether it's a pause in consumption, craving, or comparison, your energy field begins to realign. Your decisions start to come from a more conscious place, and not just from an emotional impulse. And that changes everything. Because it is not the money itself that most people lack, but the ability to perceive, organize, and channel that money wisely. This intentional pause brings a kind of focus that is rare in today's world. A focus that allows you to see more clearly where the leak is. A focus that allows you to access an internal listening that was previously muffled by noise and anxiety. Financial fasting, when done with kavana, with spiritual and emotional intent, activates a state of reconnection with purpose. In Judaism, this reconnection is called teshuvah, which is not just repentance, but return to the essence. You return to the point where the relationship with money was purer, more aligned, more conscious. And this begins to expand something invisible, but extremely real: his clarity of direction. Contrary to what many people think, clarity is not a state of mind. It is an energetic reflection of when body, mind, and soul are in alignment. And one of the quickest ways to achieve this state is by reducing the noise of consumption and extending the silence of consciousness. There are people who believe that financial miracles come from complex strategies or lucky breaks. But the biggest leaps I've ever seen happen came from a single moment of silence, of a single act of restraint, of a single cycle of pause, done with faith and surrender. And that's where the power of gratitude comes in. Because when you pause the excess and look at what you already have in depth, something moves. The frequency of your field goes up. Genuine gratitude is like a light that turns on within your inner vessel, revealing spaces that were forgotten, Gifts that were dormant, ideas that were muffled. A woman who wrote to me recently told me that, after doing a craving fast for 5 days, she realized that she didn't need to take a new expensive course as she thought, but that she already had all the resources to start her project with what she had at home. She sold her first products using skills that were stored, and with the money that came in, she decided to help a neighbor who was going through difficulties. 3 days later, an opportunity for partnership arrived on the recommendation of this same neighbor. This is Parnasa Bekavana, sustenance that comes aligned with intention, with generosity, with focus, and not just with blind effort. This is exactly what the Torah teaches us, that there is a difference between running after bread in fear and receiving sustenance with dignity. And this dignity starts within, when you organize yourself, respect yourself, and make money circulate from a clean and conscious place. Fasting is not absence, it's preparation. It is the silence that precedes the right note. It is the interval between one breath and another, where the miracle hides. And the more you practice this pause with emunah, with confidence, the more your field aligns with real abundance, the one that doesn't weigh you down, doesn't distract you, and doesn't charge you more than you can offer. I'm glad you're here, allowing yourself to immerse yourself in this wisdom that spans centuries. Each part of this content is built on the basis of deep values of the Jewish tradition, not to impose formulas, but to awaken consciousness. And if this passage touched something inside, if it clarified a point, reminded you of something that needed to be remembered, so leave your retribution with a like on this video. This simple gesture strengthens this journey and makes more people have access to this transformation. Now that consciousness has been awakened and spiritual codes have begun to align, the time has come to descend from wisdom to action. Jewish financial fasting, when put into practice with kavana, the deep intention that underpins any true transformation, becomes a powerful ritual of restarting, a personal tikkun that cleanses the channels of sustenance. But this is not something random. There is a right way to practice, and it is precisely what we are going to structure now. The first step is to choose the duration. For those who are just starting out, 24 hours already activates major internal movements. For those who want something deeper, 3 days may be ideal. The choice should respect your moment but also slightly challenge your comfort zone. After all, we are not talking about a financial diet, but about a spiritual process. By choosing this time, you position yourself in the field of creation as someone who not only wants to receive, but is willing to make room for it. Then, it's time to define which type of fasting will be practiced. And here, personalization makes all the difference. You can opt for spending fasting, stopping any non-essential purchases. You can choose to fast from desires, silencing the craving for new goods, likes, or even emotional distractions that feed the neediness. Or even fasting from external noises, where you move away from digital showcases, social networks, or conversations that instigate comparison, demand, or excess. Each of these choices cleanses a specific layer of your financial and emotional structure. Choose the one that most speaks to what weighs inside you today. During this fast, the invitation is for you to observe yourself honestly. Write down your sensations, your impulses, your resistances. What desire arises? What makes you angry? What do you want to compensate with consumption? These small inner movements reveal invisible patterns that often command your financial decisions without you realizing it. Clarity comes not only from what you avoid, but from the awareness that is born when you see yourself with courage, without distractions. And while this silence happens on the outer plane, the spiritual plane also needs an activation. Therefore, during your fast, take a moment of the day to recite a psalm with intention. Psalm 23, which speaks of divine care that provides even in dark valleys, is ideal for restoring security and faith. Psalm 112, which describes the prosperity of the righteous, can be used as a decree of alignment between ethics and abundance. Choose the one that resonates with your moment the most. It's not to memorize or just repeat. It is to feel, to transform the word into a bridge, the voice into a channel, prayer into a portal. This simple, in-depth ritual doesn't require you to be a rabbi or a financial expert. It only requires you to be present. Let him treat this fast as if he were emptying a sacred vessel so that he can receive a new wine. Prosperity, according to the Torah, is not just about money coming in, but about you becoming someone capable of sustaining that flow with maturity, peace, and purpose. And don't worry, I'll explain exactly how to use the signs and responses that arise during this fast to shape practical decisions in your financial day-to-day. The crossing starts by stopping, but it takes place when we walk more clearly, with more light. Let's continue. At the end of a well-conducted financial fast, silence leaves marks. Something inside the soul repositions itself. The mind becomes less anxious, the heart more awake, and the body lighter, not because of lack of consumption, but because of excess of meaning. And at this exact point, when the pause ends, one of the most powerful moments of the whole process begins: the resumption. Returning to consumption does not simply mean opening your wallet again. It's not about buying what you refused during the previous days. The Torah teaches us that returning to routine, after a period of spiritual elevation, is a rare opportunity to consolidate what has been transformed. Therefore, this return must be made with kavanah, the conscious intention that gives direction and energy to action. Everything you acquire or move in the minutes and hours after fasting will carry a much more powerful emotional and spiritual frequency. And therefore, the right question is not, what can I spend, but how do I want to start over? This re-entry into the financial flow is, in fact, a chance to rewrite your attitude towards money. Choose carefully where your first expense or investment will be made. It may be a basic calculation, but done with blessing and gratitude. It can be a gift to someone as a way to honor the new cycle. It can be a symbolic step towards a postponed project. What matters is that the gesture is consistent with the cleaning you have done. Jewish wisdom teaches that the first seeds after a soil is plowed have multiplying power. They carry not only intention, but also spiritual memory of the effort, the restraint, the humility that preceded. And there is also a subtle but light-filled gesture, practicing tzedakah immediately after fasting. Giving something, no matter how small, to someone who needs it, is like sealing the process with altruism. It is to say, in action, I did not prepare myself just for myself. I prepared myself to circulate light. This small act has a huge effect, because it not only multiplies the spiritual value of what you already have, but it also consecrates your money as a channel, not an end. You can donate a symbolic amount, offer something you have at home, or even share a skill that can help someone. The important thing is that it is immediate, that it does not remain in the plane of intention, but becomes part of your new rhythm. There are ancient stories of great masters of the Jewish tradition who, after days of fasting and prayer, blessed their first action of return with such kavanah that it was as if they planted a whole new cycle with that single gesture. The resumption, in the Torah, is not just any return. It is the chance to prove that the transformation was real. And when this happens, when consumption returns, but now with awareness, with purpose, with direction, something changes in the invisible field. You are no longer operating on automatic momentum. You are moving money as one moves a thread of light, with reverence and with clarity. And the universe responds to this new tone with new opportunities, new connections, and new resources. Now tell me something in all sincerity. When was the last time you took an intentional break before making a financial decision? Not that pause for lack of option, but a pause with awareness. To listen to something beyond the noise, to feel what really matters. Most people live on automatic. Buy, pay, run, repeat. But those who access the power of financial fasting relearn to breathe before acting. And that's exactly what we're going to do from now on. Organize a simple but powerful plan for you to apply in the coming days, even if your schedule is full, because it's not about time, it's about priority. And when purpose enters the center of the routine, money finds the right way to arrive. You've come this far because something inside you knows that true prosperity isn't just about receiving, it's about being ready. The modern world teaches you to chase, consume without pause, fill each space with more and more. But the ancient codes reveal another direction, the power to contain, to pause with awareness, to transform impulse into intention. Retaining is easy. Contain with purpose, this only the wise do. And this is the path we are building together here. You are not alone in this quest. Every person who comments, who practices, who reflects deeply, becomes part of a community that isn't shy about talking about wealth, but also doesn't want to access it anyway. Here we prepare ourselves spiritually, emotionally, and strategically, because it is not enough to have money. It is necessary to have structure for it to remain and fulfill its role. Then he writes down here, I enter into this fast with intention. With these words, you seal a pact with yourself, a pact of clarity, maturity, and openness to the new. And if this content made you think differently, value the break, and see fasting with different eyes, leave your like on this video. This shows that this wisdom needs to continue to be spread, and it further strengthens our journey together. And being here, learning about these codes that have crossed centuries, already puts you in a rare place, that of those who choose to grow with awareness. It is on this journey that we build a different community, made up of people who do not seek shortcuts, but truth, who understand that spirituality and money are not opposites, but allies when the heart is aligned. And if you feel like you're a part of it, this is the time to really join. Click to subscribe to the channel and walk with those who share this vision. Here, each content was designed to strengthen you on the inside before the result appears on the outside. And stay with me, because the next step of our journey will show you a key that almost no one talks about. And that makes all the difference between those who win and lose what they have achieved. It is there, in the subtlety of the after, that the wise act differently. Click on the next video and come dive deeper. Your next level starts with a simple step now. Let's go together.